we have suffered in many ways and continue to do so, and that therefore the post-independence African country or countries are bedeviled by many things. That could be a reason. It has also been said that part of the reason why we have not realized our potential is because we make the wrong choices. And that could very well be true. And my brother who spoke about choices so very well told us that it all rests on the choices that you make. And you know, just this morning my wife sent me a proverb from Turkey that when you elect a clown and you think that he will be a king, what he does is to convert the kingdom into a circus. And I am suggesting to us that that is part of the African problem, because it starts with political hygiene. Most of Africa is suffering because we do not have democracies. We have KHAKISTOCRACYs. And KHAKISTOCRACYs are governments by our very worst. This is what we must deal with, and this is what we must say. Who do we elect into our public offices? Because, as I've said before, when you allow hyenas to take care of goats, why should you be surprised when the goats are eaten? This is the same. And Africa is only going to realize our potential in all areas when, by dint of choice, we enable and allow our best men and women to serve in different areas. I've heard it being said about Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. I've heard it being suggested about Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia. I've heard it being said about Japan. I've heard it being said about other countries. But there was a conscious decision on the part of those individuals and the followership. We always talk about leaders, but we never talk about the followers. The followers must also style up. Africans on average are for some reason attracted to thieves. Africans are for some reason attracted to men and women who cannot serve her. And when they are not served, then they complain. When Africans are told, choose you now whom we shall release, Jesus of Nazareth or Barabbas, they say, release Barabbas. And when Barabbas behaves like Barabbas, they say, why are you not behaving like Christ? It cannot be done. And this is what we must do. And I am submitting to us that it can be done and it should be done. I know a number of African countries, and I travel this continent sufficiently to know that there are African countries that are doing well. They are trying. There is no nation without trials and tribulation. We are fond of talking about the United States of America as an exemplar of that which is good and bad. When they said in 1776 that they held certain truths to be self-evident, that all men were born equal, that they were endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those who are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, were blacks included? No, they were not. Did they not fight a civil war? Yes, they did. Are they not frustrating people until 1963? Did George Floyd, was he not killed only recently? There is not a single nation without trials and tribulation. And we must therefore remind ourselves that we have the wherewithal to catapult Africa into a different orbit. And Nyerere of Tanzania once said, we must also define what development means. And he said, development does not mean necessarily the building of skyscrapers. There is nothing wrong with that. But let the Americans go to the moon. We are going to provide water to our villages. We must define what development means. And once we define what development means and we define ourselves, then Africa shall realize our potential. In 1996, Thabo Mbeki talked about an African. Who is an African? Who are you? Define yourself first. The Chinese define themselves. The Indonesians define themselves. The Koreans define themselves. We must define ourselves and begin to believe in our institutions. You know, and I see it in this part of the world. When we want to look at our economy, we say, what does Moody's say? And Moody's is very moody when they come to Africa. Moody's. Can the Department of Economics at UNILAG not do that? Can't they? McKinsey, an American outfit, they are the ones who come here and tell us how our economy is behaving. When the American dollar as much as sneezes, the Naira goes into a coma. Why? 63 years after independence in Nigeria, 66 in Ghana, 61 in Kenya and many other countries, we still believe that somebody else's currency is what must define us. 63 years after independence, we are still importing chicken as if our chicken forgot how to lay eggs. The time is now for Africa to ask fundamental questions. Because if you ask the wrong questions, you'll get the wrong answers. And I'm suggesting to us that Africa is already asking those questions.